Hello and welcome to Digital Escapism, episode 10. Oh my god, we have made it to double digits. Should we have some sort of a celebration?
No.
Okay, let's move on. No celebration from us. I feel like we should.
What?
Alright, fuck you both then. I'm happy. We made it to 10 episodes and none of us are dead. No one's died from a drug addiction yet.
What about Kenneth?
Well, we don't talk about Kenneth. That's a dark secret.
Yeah.
Guys, welcome to the episode. Be sure to head over to digitalescapism.co.uk. Be sure to head over to our Twitter, DE_podcast, and also check out our Instagram and Facebook. Specifically Instagram, we've got some tasty tidbits. Jack likes to post pictures of himself in the pool. So there's pictures in various states of undress. Sometimes they get banned, sometimes they get censored, sometimes they slip through, and he's quite happy.
I'm doing a series of pieces at the moment where I take off all my clothes and play Street Fighter 5.
On your nipples that are erect, hanging off of them.
Just plugged a USB into my fingernails and jacked myself into the old PlayStation and getting some Zangief action whilst totally buck naked.
You can get the calendar on our website.
Yes, that's a big thing. That'll be a big seller, I'm sure.
What is that? Oh, the calendar on me playing the Street Fighter 5
Yeah,
naked.
definitely.
I've got a brand new arcade stick.
Guys, head over to iTunes.
Because it's my cock.
Head over to iTunes,
The
where
ultimate joystick.
if you subscribe, I'm sure you will get very professional
Head over to iTunes, guys.
podcasts.
Plop us a subscription. You get all the arcade stick puns
That's
that you
right.
can get on anywhere else.
And
more
if
than anywhere else.
you're like Kenneth Jones and you follow us on Twitter, you can win games like Mass Effect completely for free. So jump on that.
He
That's
won
what
it
I'd say.
completely for free.
There was no catch. It wasn't rigged. It was a genuine person that wasn't involved with the DE crew.
Do you want to give his real name, though, rather than the fake name I gave you to say?
Oh, fuck yeah. I wrote that down earlier. What was his real name? Oh, now everyone's going to think we're liars. You bastard. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Jamie Millard.
Jamie Miller.
Oh, that is funny. Guys, I'm joined by my regular group of renegades and nerds. We've got over here Mr. Folkard Jack.
Yep, absolutely. Jack Fulcard, please add me. My name is Dimvayu, Dinveiw, spelt incorrectly on purpose. It's ironic. It's not really out. Feel free to join me. I'm on the PlayStation Network, and I've just picked up Street Fighter, just looking for people to play with. Hello.
And we've got Mr. Pryor Tom over here in the corner.
Hiya, aka TJP89. Add me on PSN and we can be friends.
And we've got our sound engineer, Mr. Joe Chesney, in the corner.
Hello.
Without a mic, I should add. He's very busy. He needs two hands to do what he's doing, one underneath the table and one on the sound rig. And we've got
masturbating.
the knowledge, the man, the power, Mr. Horton Chris.
A.K.A. Acon7, before it was cool, before the guy come along and started singing about how lonely he was.
AKA jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. Hashtag jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams.
And that's another podcast.
That's a completely different podcast. That's like the podcast where it's like something like Truth Tellers or something like that.
I reckon you'd love that, wouldn't you?
I don't know why we were giving out PSN names. I mean, if you want to find me, my name's Greg himself 15, but I'm probably not going to add you, and I'm probably not going to play with you because I play with my friends. But whatever, I'm just chucking it out
That's
there.
a good point, actually.
But if you play with me, I'll probably beat you anyway because I'm super pro. Right, so following on from the trend, we have obviously just had our news episode last week. So this week is our feature episode. A feature episode today has been brought to us by Mr. Pryor Tom over here in the corner. He suggested a really great idea, which was, Tom, if you could explain?
Basically games that we believe to be influential within the sort of genre that they were, I guess.
So these are games
created in some instances.
Yes.
Or created.
So these are games that we'd go around and discuss that they've had a massive impact on the way games are made, the way the games are publicised, the way that games are played, that
Absolutely,
sort of thing.
yeah. Maybe they've had a mass effect.
Okay.
Oh!
We see what you did there.
Oh.
That's horrendous. Someone please edit that out.
I'm sure that joke has a half-life.
Oh, please.
I'm sure that's Gears of War.
That doesn't make any sense. What are we doing? Someone please come and save me. I've introduced you all as professionals and you've melted down that.
Scraping the pun barrel.
Yeah,
right
scraping the pun barrel with a wooden spoon.
Was that too Zelda Breath of the Wild?
Please, just stop while you're ahead.
Okay,
So listen, what what I propose is that I'm gonna read out some of the games that we've got written down here. Okay. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be people that are going to take the lead on these, that are going to kind of add, and we're going to contribute them to a team. But we're going to try and run through some really big examples and kind of explain to you guys why we as a group feel that these are very influential games, what they've done in the past, and how they've kind of changed the scope of games going forward. So, up here on the board, and these are in no order, by the way, so we're not going to kind of like do chronological order because that sounds far too much like hard work, and we do this for fun. So the first one I'll pick out is Grand Theft Auto, which I believe was picked by Chris over here.
Specifically GTA 3.
Okay, so why have you picked GTA 3? Why did you want to add this into the list, my friend?
I feel like it was a massively influential game. Any game that you can take the original game and put the word clone after to describe other games is obviously hugely influential. And GTA 3 was the first time, one of the first times, we got a big lush open 3D open world.
3D, ladies.
The important part of that is 3D. Games had been 3D for a long time, but there hadn't been, I'm not saying there wasn't, because there was before, and this is a common theme that's going to come up as we're talking about influential games. The most influential games aren't always necessarily the first games to do something.
They're not the most groundbreaking in terms of being the first to do it, but it's maybe one of the ones to do it, but do it so well that everyone's like, what have we done before?
That's right, yeah. Or perhaps it's a more high-profile game, so it's been, peddled more or whatever. But yeah, GTA, without a doubt, for me, it blew the lid off of what I expected from games, what I thought was possible in games, and it only ever iterated on itself and got better. I mean, each GTA from then onwards, was better. Even these other clones, yeah, of course, yeah. In terms of story, it wasn't until after GTA 3, Miami, Vice City. That the main character got a voice, and then that was something that resonated really well that they kept throughout their games. I think
they probably would have liked to have done that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just putting yourself in the picture. I remember playing GTA 2 on my PS1 and thinking this is brilliant, and then flash forward, you've got a PS2 and GTA 3 comes out and you're like, wow.
It's probably everybody's first time getting into a Grand Theft Auto game as well, wasn't Grand Theft Auto 3? That was mine, going around my friend's house and literally just... we'd pick it up, play it, only to cause chaos. Because you had so much freedom to do stuff. Yeah, and then it was more like a survival game,
didn't it? That sandbox
when I first had it.
And I just remember, even at that young age, being aware of kind of the effort that went into games, and just standing there on the corner of a street and just watching the pedestrians walk by and the cars all stopping at the traffic lights, like the little things, do you know what I mean?
I remember being amazed that you could get a sniper rifle and zoom into some of the newspapers that were flying around, and it was the same picture. Was it like a picture of Elvis or something?
Yeah, zombie Elvis.
And all the radio stations as well. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
They were really good.
That was really spot on, having the radio stations. That was great.
Yeah, I think
add-on.
And I don't necessarily think that without that game we wouldn't have had those type of games. I don't think that at all. I think a lot of these games that are influential, a lot of people would like to do them, but it's having that compromise between where the technology is at the time, what's possible, and how you get to that point. And a lot of the time, they're just the first ones out the gate. But I'm glad it was them because
they're British.
Yeah, and they've pioneered that genre, really, that open world 3D genre. A lot of the games these days can trace their roots back to that.
I think what really helped with that game as well, with its popularity, I'm not saying that it wasn't a great game by itself, it was all the controversy it stirred up.
Indeed.
Yeah, because you were beating prostitutes to death.
Yeah. You can kill a prostitute. My son's gonna be a mass murderer if he plays this game.
That's what they say, isn't it? Any publicity is good publicity.
If people want to ban your game, that's a good game, and I want to play it.
Yeah. It's like Manhunt.
It was a sign of the times, though, because I don't think my parents were aware of what that game was. I think they knew you could probably run people over, but if you play them again now, some of the references and some of the things they talk about
it was
on the radio.
Big.
There's language as well.
Say again?
Did they let you play it?
Yeah, I did have it, yeah.
I just don't think they cared what you played.
No.
I think
it was ironic.
Can I play this game? I don't give a fuck!
They were too far gone at that point. Tom was too far gone.
I was quite young when we played it, so I got it on release, and I remember when like younger siblings or friends would come around and they'd be like, but don't let them play GTA. So I wasn't allowed to play it, but they weren't, and I was about 10 or whatever.
That's great.
I loved that game.
I loved it.
One of my quotes recently to Chris, if you remember this, Chris, and was talking about Grand Theft Auto. And I was just like, oh no, because the best Grand Theft Auto is GTA 3. Do you remember that?
I do.
And he was just like, what are you on about? And I was just like, no, it was so good. Like the story was so well driven and it was perfect.
Best Grand Theft Auto for me is definitely Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Really?
I love that game. I played that game, got really far in it. Then for whatever reason, my file got deleted, and I was like, damn it. Well, I guess I'm going to be up all night playing it until I get back to that position. And I just remember my dad coming down at 5 a.m. going, bloody hell, Jack, you're up early to play that game. And I was like,
I haven't been asleep.
Yeah.
But you think about GTA 3 and some of the missions that it was doing at the time. We still do them today. We do pick up and drop people off.
Yeah.
We
protect missions.
We protect missions, and they all still stand up today. It's the blueprint that's been followed thereafter ever since.
And although a lot of games are coming away from this now in terms of their open world, it was a trope for a long time that even though it was an open world, you'd only get a section of it until you progress to a certain point in the game.
Yeah, have you guys seen how small the map is, like realistically? It's crazy. If you look at a map with all the smoke and effects removed that are added in and look at the actual streets, it's not as big as you think.
Yeah.
But for the time it was big. I mean, it was released in 2001. It's crazy to think that
we'd never seen anything
ago,
like that then, either. Like when it come out, the freedom that it gave you in that game, the open world that it presented you with, you know, it really was. It was breathtaking.
I could play this game right now. In fact, I know I can because I repurchased it as part of the GTA collection on the PS4 that came out at some point last year. I could get to the Banshee from at any point in the map right now. I know where that Banshee is, and it's just around the corner. 8 Balls around the corner as well. If you want to just like stock up your car and get a bomb in there.
Yeah,
I was reading here on this website. It's quite interesting. Some sort of like facts about GTA 3 that apparently they'd planned a first-person mode for the game.
Oh, all right.
And there are actually files in the game pertaining to it. But again, it's another one. Just in 2001, they just didn't have the processing power because we're getting technical here, Chris. But the games were very. It was very clever how they created the game actually, and I want to encourage people, if you've not seen it, there's a very good documentary is probably the wrong term for
like a making of, like,
well, the BBC made kind of a
I remember that
a thing about Rockstar Development
with Daniel
Studios.
Radcliffe, wasn't it?
And it's quite interesting because basically at the time, I won't go too deep, but the half of the problem was actually getting the game to be on a CD.
Right.
And if they had created it in a way that all of the environments were there, you would have needed about 10 CDs and you wouldn't have been able to compress all that data on a CD.
Right.
And at the time, obviously, you didn't have CDs like Blu-ray where they could cope with more data than that we have now. So they did things called like draw distance.
Right.
And they had a way of creating the environments that the environments would pop in as you populated them.
Yeah.
So instead of that data being sort of hard written on the disc, it would also be like randomly accessible data sort of thing, so it would bring it in and just take that part from the disc that was on there.
Do you remember?
It's very clever the way they did it. It's ingenious actually, and that's why Rockstar had completely dominated, because people didn't think it was possible in 2001 to have a game that size on a PS2 disc with all of the audio, all of the textures
that would generate
the way
on
that
the
was
fly.
loaded.
Yeah,
fascinating.
I remember my cousin always had a ropey old disc and a bit of an old PS2, and sometimes you'd be driving down the street and the game wouldn't have loaded and you'd get that weird blue meshed like texture everywhere.
I remember trying to hunt down for the dodo as well. You must remember that.
Imagine trying to fly it. Oh,
yeah,
mate.
Exactly. And originally they had even planned an online multiplayer as well, but they had to cut that. And again, that would have been one of the things where they just want to do these things. So it just shows you that for years they've wanted to do that, but things have held them back. And now today, you've got current inclination of GTA, has a first-person mode, has ultra sort of HD graphics options and texture packs that you can download, and has a fantastic online multiplayer. And what you're seeing today is what they wanted to do back in 2001. But they've been so frustrated, they've had to sort of do their best and work at it. And it really shows that they've got the love for bringing that game. So I think GTA was a great pick. I think we've got another pick as well. Jack, did you select this? It's Half-Life.
No, I didn't.
This was me.
This was you
Chris
again.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Chris. You always just take all the pigs.
No, look, I'm sorry, right, but we can all talk about it. This is why I said
we discussed this kind of briefly in another feature episode, didn't we? So I think we kind of covered a lot of ground there. But Half-Life, you can't make a list like this and you can't not put in Half-Life. I'm sorry.
I mean,
it has to be done.
I'm glad we've put it in here because actually in one of the older podcasts, Jack actually put the question to someone, what is so, why is this game held in such high regard? And it sort of got breezed over, and I'm glad that we're going to have the opportunity now to tell Jack why it was so amazing when it came out, why it's been so influential.
Jack loved the game anyway, but I think it was a good question to ask because if someone's not really kind of involved and they're saying why is it so good, I just think at the time you had a lot of games that had basically we were talking about this earlier, Chris. So you'd be playing the game.
You'd have your gameplay section.
You have your gameplay section, and then you'd hit a brick wall, and then suddenly it would come in with this cutscene, and it would be like a superimposed cutscene. You're like, oh wow, I wish the game looked like this, because obviously you can do that, can't you, when you're not playing through it?
Yeah.
And then you'd watch a cutscene, motionless, holding the controller, not being able to do anything. And what Half-Life did that was so interesting at the time is they had story-driven cutscenes. So the start of the game was essentially a cutscene, and it was also an introduction. It was also a tutorial. It's all rolled into one.
They blurred the lines, didn't they? And it was amazing. That level of immersion, because that's what it did really. Before that, like you say, you had your gameplay, you had your cutscenes, and the two were very separate entities that broke it up. That were just joined like butt to butt sort of thing. Whereas Half-Life for me was the first game that moved away from that in terms of I know other games had scripted events prior to that, but that was the first one that really utilised scripted events to create immersion and create a believable story and a believable world.
It was going sort of down the rabbit hole and the story unravelled itself.
Yeah.
As you went along.
You think of games today that have like scripted events, like the way they start. I mean, what was I playing? I haven't played it for a while, but randomly, Killzone Shadowfall comes to mind. And at the beginning of that game, you're in a helicopter, you're flying over the city, you get walked up to speak to some guy, and even that has echoes of that very first. When you're in Half-Life, you're going into Black Mesa, you're on the tram. Do you know what I mean? Like that introduction to that game.
Is there a better introduction? Because I just get so fond about that introduction. I've just never seen something that engages you so well, and then you're doing the experiment and you say, oh God, and it's going all wrong! And then they all start dying, and then there's head crabs jumping out.
And you're in there doing it as it's happening. Good. You haven't been pulled out of it. You're not being treated to a cutscene. And bear in mind, when this came out in like 1998, this was the first time that you'd experienced this. For me it was anyway, and the scripted events that we see in games today hark back to this. This was the first game that had big things going on around you that while you still had control of the game, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, it really did change things up, and I think we'd be remiss not to mention it.
I played that one on the PS2 for the first time. I picked up the port, yeah.
Really?
Did you like it?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
PS2, I think, strangely enough, if I remember rightly, I could be wrong here, but it had a port, didn't it, for cooperative story?
Did it really?
I'm fairly confident it did, or maybe it was Xbox 360 with the orange box, which we spoke about in another episode. Right. But there was a really strange port where you could play for it cooperative, and you just see this random generic woman in like sort of uniform, and one of you would be Gordon Freeman as well, but you could play through the story and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a good idea because it enables people to sort of help each other out, because the game was long and the game was hard. People forget that this wasn't an easy game.
I remember hearing about it, but my PC could never run it, and then it just randomly come out on the PS2, so I picked it up, and like you've all sort of mentioned on that tram journey, I was like, what's going on? Like, I can't move, but I can, and nothing's really happening. And then you're connecting all the pods, and like you say, and then obviously the accident happens, or whatever it is with the aliens.
I'm just going to get depressed about Half-Life 3 again now.
It was all at the time. It was all part of the world building, and it was the first time for me that it felt like I was almost playing a film in terms of the production value that had gone into setting all that up.
I think it's the first time where you have something where you used to have this argument where there'd be this very sort of straightforward line between a game and a film, and I still think to this day there are people out there that wrongfully sort of lump video games in as being childish, something you grow out of, something that isn't artistic medium. Well, clearly that's complete bullshit. But I think Half-Life was something that really adequately showed that if that was a film, it wouldn't be as in-depth and as engaging as you actually playing through it. By playing through it, you even though Gordon Freeman didn't say a word and you didn't really see him, you really felt for Gordon Freeman. You really bought into the story. The voice acting and the writing of that story and the intrigue and then the army coming in added so much depth, so much more depth than you basically, like when people who read books and they watch a film and they go, oh my God, it's missed all of that. It does. Sometimes they do a good job. But, that's why it's very difficult as well on the flip side to turn video games into movies. I haven't seen many good examples of a video game that's been turned into a movie well.
No, there's not many of those.
There aren't, are there? So
there's
it's
a
one of those
couple
ones
that
where
have
it's
gone
difficult.
well the other way round.
Yes.
But even then, it's few and far between, really.
But absolutely, Half-Life's got to be chucked in there. Next on the list, and again in no order, we've got I think three kind of games grouped together because they do sort of group into the same sort of genre and also very similar sort of years for release. We've got Duke, Nukem 3D, we've got Doom, and we've also got Wolfenstein as well, which I think was picked by you, Tom, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, well, you could argue we wouldn't have Half-Life potentially without Doom.
Yeah, you're right, especially about Wolfenstein. I think that was one of the first.
Wolfenstein was the first quote-unquote FPS game.
Right.
Yeah, this is the really, really early kind of inclination of first-person shooters, what we're seeing here, isn't it, with these games?
I think when I took on the brief of influential games, it was hard for me not to talk about first-person shooters, as that's a genre that I'm passionate about and really enjoy.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was Wolfenstein in 3D that had really started it off, and then Doom come and sort of was it on steroids,
Doom
if you know what I mean? Wasn't it?
Doom was the big one, the one that...
And then Duke come from that later on, where there was a bit more of a plot, a bit more of a story, a bit more of a very 90s character in it. I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum, all that sort of cliche stuff.
He was a character that you
with his flat top haircut.
He was great. I love Duke.
But Doom for me was a big one as well. I mean, I remember playing that as a young kid and being really bloody scared of it, to be honest with you, at the time.
Doom was the one that, for me, I think popularised the genre. Like, you had Wolfenstein and it was about, and that was cool, but Doom was the one that, had the right marketing, it had the right push behind it, and at the time when it came out, that was the one everyone was playing, and that is the reason I personally feel Doom is the reason that first-person shooters are so popular today.
Doom did it well. And, I mean, did you guys find it scary? Like when we're at the same age.
Petrified.
So it was the noises, and it was also the darkness and the lighting effects of the game that scared me. These big dark areas, and then the doors coming down. It's like when the doors come down, those sound effects, and then there's loads of people behind the door, and you're like, shit.
And they're all like moaning and groaning.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember having nightmares about it as a kid.
I must have been like.
I loved it.
It came out in '93, and we played it on our Windows 95 computer, and I was born in '89, so I would have been like 6.
Yeah, this is what I mean. I wasn't. We were late to the party with
Yeah,
that one, but
I
it
was
still
like
scared the
super
crap
young,
out of
and
me.
it was really scary. Another one that scared me was Quake. That was like a really scary game.
Yeah, Quake was really weird as well. Doom and Quake had always been sort of touted as sort of equals.
Did those games ever come out on console? Because
Yes.
I only played
they did.
Doom around my friend's house on his
There's
PC.
been loads of ports
I
of Doom
remember
and
Quake
loads of
2
ports of
coming out on
Quake.
like the N64 maybe or something.
They've been ported numerous times, both
Right.
of them. Absolutely, there's been
What
loads
is
of
Quake?
ports.
What was Quake different? Because I've only played Doom and it was around a friend's house. I know Doom,
Quake is
it's
hard.
scary.
Quake is set in space, isn't it? I suppose is one of the things.
Star Wars rip-off.
Quake has these power-ups. People used to say Quake was faster than Doom, a bit more
I think
intense.
the thing about Quake 2
think
when
the
it came along,
community
it was
preferred
running at 60
multiplayer.
frames per second,
Yeah.
and everyone was blown away by
It
that.
was super fast,
Yeah.
super fast. Hard to play that game. It was that fast. But one of the other things I think that if we go back to when we were talking about GTA about Doom, you got all the controversy of Doom, hadn't you? With all the
Satan worship and stuff.
well, no, the school shootings at the time. And then people blaming that they were playing Doom, and that was a cause. And
Around Doom? What school shootings were around Doom?
the big one.
Columbine?
Yeah,
That didn't come out.
No, that was years later.
That was years later.
Columbine was like 2001.
yeah, they used to play Doom. Google it right now.
Okay. I'll take
there's
your word
people
for
talking about it, and they used to create custom levels. But what I'm saying again, you see this theme when you go through the history of gaming, where people tend to just try and blame, an individual's actions for a game, like your GTA and
whatever the controversial game at the time is.
Manhunt, we could go and pick for ages on that, and I know it's a completely different topic, but I'm just saying it's interesting that we've picked these games for a completely different reason, yet you start to see these sort of themes pop out with them.
And the media loves to exasperate that as well.
Of course they do.
You might have played Doom like once or twice or whatever, but because of the story and how they can exasperate it, it's he played Doom all the time.
Yeah.
It's
I
really
mean, I love
bad.
chopping
It's
people
harming
up.
your
Don't get me
children.
wrong, but video games didn't affect that at all. I love chopping people up before I played video games.
Exactly. I like dissolving
I
people
give
in.
up video games before I give up chopping people up.
I mean, you told me that when you need to dispose of their bodies, you dissolve them in a bathtub full of acid. But
what I don't eat, I dissolve.
You remember to use the correct acid because you've watched a couple of episodes of Breaking Bad, so that's taught you something.
Breaking Bad, if anything, Breaking Bad's helped me cut people up more than video games.
Definitely.
So fuck you, media.
we've got enough.
Can I just before we move on,
I haven't really chopped people up. That was a joke. I smashed their faces in.
Doom was a popular one in our house, but I've just got to give a special mention to Duke 3D.
No, good shout. We didn't really mention that much.
I used to play Duke Nukem 3D. That was fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant.
And the boobies.
And I guess maybe why it resonated a little bit more with us is Doom was a very sort of hands-off experience. You didn't know the main protagonist's name, and you was experiencing it through his eyes.
You had to read the text at the start of the levels, basically.
Yeah, whereas Duke was very much here is the all-action, all-American guy. He's got catchphrases, and he is, brash, obnoxious, and he doesn't care, and he just wants his babes.
He was quite funny with the pigs, wasn't he? It's time for bacon and stuff like that when he's killing them.
Good, and he was influenced by all of them 90s action films as well.
Max Headroom was probably a good influence. Most people won't know what I'm talking about here now, but you can Google that.
But yeah, we just adored Duke in our house. I remember we played it like all the time. Me and my brother, we knew all the cheat codes to clip through the walls. There was the secret rooms. There was multiple ways to
Do you
go
remember
about
any of the cheats at the moment?
There was one, like the no clip one. I think there's like a console, and it literally was you type in like no clip or something. I don't know.
Yeah, DM view, and you get like third person and all that.
Really?
That game really is, because I was quite big into Counter-Strike and the modding side of Half-Life, and that game had it as well with Duke, where you could open up the console and you could manipulate the game. I mean, we even got we got into trouble once, myself and my brother, because we went online to find some custom maps, and you think back in these days when it was a 56k internet where you'd have to go through the phone line, and we'd sit there and we'd be trying to find some maps to download to play Duke Nukem some further, and we just run up a big phone bill and got told off for that.
Good, yeah.
Do you remember dial-up though? Like, there's going to be so many people now. Like, we're showing our age, where people are like, "What dial-up? You guys are fucking lucky, man, with broadband." I mean, I remember, get off the internet. Your mum needs to make a phone call.
Yeah. We also had a friend over the road from us who had it on his PC, and we'd often take our computer around there. And we'd actually have a LAN, so we'd have
that's cool.
Local LAN, and it was literally, we had a little like MDF bit of wood between the computers.
I think that's where Quake was popular with LAN as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons Quake was probably so popular, Chris, where you're asking like LAN. Yeah. It marred up really well and hosted things quite well as well.
So I guess for me that was such an influential game for me and for the FPS sort of genre.
I think that's a good pick. Jack's picked a title out, which, until he said it didn't pop into my mind, and then as soon as he said it, I was like, why did we never have this?
And it is Leisure Suit Larry. Picture yourself, horny, 14, and in desperate need for some virtual boobies. Then along comes Leisure Suit Larry. That's not the real game I picked.
It's Metal Gear Solid.
It's Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
I loved this game. And I think the reason I loved it so much is because it was always making you think, and it always challenged you. The first challenge I had with the game was getting past the start menu, because I kept on pressing X, and different to every other game I've ever played in my entire life up until that point, X was like go backwards and circle was to enter stuff. So I took that game back to the stores thinking it was broken.
You didn't?
Yeah. Because I couldn't do it. I was like, you signed me a broke game, it don't work, I can't get into it. Then they got it up to me and they showed me, I think I bought it from Blockbusters, and they were like, no, you just got to press circle and it will take you into the game. I was like, oh, thank you very much, and I felt like an absolute idiot.
That's hilarious.
But But no,
this game is broken.
I love Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid is probably my favourite game franchise of any other game franchise. I've played them all, including the PS Vita ones. I loved Metal Gear Solid, especially considering at that time I'd been watching Escape from New York.
Okay.
And
Good
that
film.
is basically completely like it's not. It's basically like lots of the characters inspired by Snake Plissken.
Snake Plissken.
From Escape from New York, because
With
you
the
play
eye
a
patch
character.
and stuff.
Yeah,
Oh, is that
and
real?
also his
Yeah.
name is Snake, and his last name is also he gives his last name as Plissken.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
people will see it the other way around and go, "Oh, Metal Gear Solid was based. These movies were based on Metal Gear Solid or something." They got their dates wrong.
Because obviously in Metal Gear 2, his code name is Pliskin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know this.
Yeah.
Wow, you
Starts-
didn't know that.
There's
Starts
lots-
opening up doors, doesn't it?
There's lots of pop culture references,
Yeah.
but Jack, I mean, those are all really good reasons, and I certainly wouldn't take anything away. The game's really personal
Please
for me
don't.
as well.
So you've
But hang on one second.
sorry.
Why would you think it's important, though, as a influential game? What did MGS do for games in general? I mean, this is a console game initially, yeah. So this come out on the console, and this was a game that didn't come out on PCs. Why was it so good? What did it do for console players, and what did it change?
Well, before really getting into video games, my biggest passion was movies. Like, I really loved films, and I think that the Metal Gear franchise, I mean, it did some really great stuff with stealth, and its gameplay was really spot on with what it wanted to do and how it wanted to make you feel, and it was the first kind of game where fighting people was not the priority. It was getting to the objective or moving around the objective, and making sure you're unseen, and that gameplay was solid throughout it. But around that,
You might even say it was Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, Chris, oh, you really are Call of Duty ghosts. But
Oh my god!
I really felt that Metal Gear Solid, and even all the other Metal Gear Solids, really create like a movie that you're playing. Like,
Okay.
I really felt like I was playing a film throughout that game, and it was so full of action and drama, and the voice acting was spot on,
And the
Yeah.
music.
and the music and everything around it was so tense, and it really created an action-based film that you were playing and then you were interacting with. I remember that first moment when I was a little kid, and I was playing it probably in the middle of the night, and I turned a corner, and all of a sudden there was blood all over these walls, and I was like, shit, and I like moved forward, and then you just saw some guy getting eviscerated by an invisible ghost, and I just remember being terrified, but I was so engrossed with the story about what's happening and about what I can do to stop it that I just had to move forward and move on. So I think one of the things that's so great about it is how fluidly this game works with films, is inspired by films, and also I think probably would inspire some films, and works with other media. I mean, it makes you think outside the norm of a lot of other games as well.
I mean, it was very good for
Yeah.
for those reasons. You're absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of innovation in that game that we've not even scratched the surface on, and the all-round story and the detail that we saw from it was really, really good. I mean, the codec sequences
That was
to
on the back of the
introduce.
box.
Yeah, the codec sequences with obviously all the voice acting that you had. The voice acting was top notch. Then you had sort of very interesting parts where you had to sort of change control around to beat some of the bosses.
Praying Mantis.
Yeah,
Or
and
was
it-
Psycho Mantis. sorry.
Psycho Mantis, and it felt very much like a film, didn't it? I think
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. I think it's done elements of what we were talking about with Half-Life, where it's really engaged and pulled you in with a story, but also been really fun and very innovative way to play. You can play all guns blazing, I suppose, if you want to. You can play very stealthily. You can sneak round. A lot of great item management.
Yeah.
The game was just very well done on lots of
Yeah.
levels, and it's really hard to pick out individual things. It's just, again, it's the sum of its parts.
I think that's a good thing that Metal Gear Solid brought, was that it created various opportunities for you to tackle a problem. So obviously the problem would be you enter a room and you need to get to the other side of the room without being seen, and there's lots of different ways that you could do this, by either like using the cardboard box, hiding, taking people out. It's your choice on how you want to proceed. Let me blow your brains out about like how the video games were inspired. So the Metal Gear Solid, the one that was released on PlayStation, I felt was really inspired by Escape from New York, mainly because it had Snake Plissken and the whole kind of like sneaking into Mother Base. But I thought that Metal Gear Solid 2 was really inspired by The Matrix, because obviously you're inside the trading simulator all along, and it's like you're inside the Matrix, you need to get out. And then also Metal Gear Solid 3, which is my favourite Metal Gear Solid, heavily inspired by like James Bond type films, especially with the music score they did. So
that's a really fantastic song, Snake Eater.
Yeah, Snake Eater. I mean, it really just shows that Hideo Kojima really loved his films and really took strong inspiration from them. So I guess I feel that this game franchise, Metal Gear Solid, how it influenced the gaming world, it is by bringing that kind of entertainment to video games and exploring like movie style content in a video game.
Can I just share something with you real quickly, Chris?
Sure.
I hope you can see this as well. What I want to tell you guys is Metal Gear Solid 2 was released in 2001, which is the same time as GTA 2, Sons of Liberty, right? They released the game in 2001, but at E3 in 2000 they played a trailer that was like a few minutes long. Look at this trailer for back in 2001. Do you remember this opening level?
Oh, I do.
Yeah. I mean, I've got the music off at the moment, just in case copyright notices and all this. But the music as well was brilliant. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but
Terminator.
This was literally hyped to hell. Like, to you have been at E3 at the time when they released this trailer, all in 60 frames per second, and they were touting how good this was on Metal Gear, on sort of PlayStation 2. This was immense, and this is one of the ones that I know MGS1 was a lot of people's introduction. To me, I didn't get around to playing that. My first introduction was Metal Gear Solid 2, and I went back and played MGS1. But I loved this game, and I loved obviously that initial level on the boat with your silenced pistols. This plays like a film, this trailer here. It's mental the way that it's done it. There are games today in 2017 that have got, you know, quadruple the processing power, blah blah blah, and they still can't do something as well as this did here.
We're looking at you, Mass Effect Andromeda.
Just look at that. I mean, I could sit here and watch this all day. I'm going to have to stop it now. But
in regards to this series and what you were saying, Jack, I think you're absolutely spot on. In terms of how influential it was, we don't see, apart from what it done for stealth at the time, because there wasn't really a lot of focus on stealth when it came out, particularly the first one, and it kind of opened the avenues for them stealth games. There's an argument for that. In terms of the actual gameplay, it's quite unique, and it didn't influence over a lot, but where it did influence is the production values, and games saw that game and they thought, we need to fucking pull our socks up. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because this is top tier. This is so high tier quality. The polish, you know.
Best of the best at the time.
Exactly.
And then I think they still continue to get better after that, but there was a point in the series, which we were talking about earlier, where MGS unfortunately sort of slid downhill. And unfortunately, I think that was due to creative differences and stifling and problems
that was
between.
On the last one,
I disagree, man. I
enjoyed 5.
To me, 5 seemed like it was trying to be something else. It seemed like at the time Metal Gear Solid was doing its own thing, being its own entity, doing it great, and there were games that were trying to copy it. The most recent one seemed like they were trying to copy other games and jump on that, and that's when you know you're making a mistake.
Yeah, see, ironically, 5 did... Ironically, we're talking about influential games. 5 was influenced by a lot of Western action games, wasn't it? You know,
rather than them being their own thing.
There's echoes of like the Far Cry sort of setup, like in there with, you know, an open world and bases that you're approaching. And,
I think that's. I think in regards to the game style, that is very much what Hideo Kojima liked or wanted to be doing. But I do.
No, he did, Jack. You've took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say
He took the forefront of creating that open world engine. He was the one that like forefronted the what's it called, Fox engine. It was actually called.
I get that, but I don't think this is the game he wanted.
I can potentially agree with that. Obviously, we'll never know. I think that there are lots of elements in there which are Hideo Kojima-esque. But I did think that the game was lacking. I can't say that that's because of what happened between them. It may be. I still think that the game quality and like the gameplay of it was really good, and I really enjoyed it.
I think 5 is one of the best games on this gen. I thought it was fantastic. The
But
open approach to missions that you could do.
It is and isn't, but
none.
it's nothing like, you know, I'm looking back at Metal Gear Solid 2 now, and I'm thinking, how did we get from Metal Gear Solid 2 with a story and that game to MGS 5? I personally think that they've lost some of their way along
with
that
MGS,
line.
they are always trying to do something new.
I get that.
And they're always,
but it doesn't always mean that's the right thing.
Obviously not. I mean, there are things that were in Metal Gear Solid 4 that are not in Metal Gear Solid 5. There are things that were fantastic in Metal Gear Solid 3, like choosing your own armor pattern and like taking ages to pick out your armor pattern that aren't in aren't in Metal. Obviously, they're not in Grand Theft Auto 4, but they aren't in Metal Gear Solid 5. But I mean, you got to keep trying things. I'd rather a games company keep trying stuff and maybe not always hitting the mark than just do the same old stuff and gradually decline.
I get that, and it's hard to make it right. But I mean, we're looking at games that were influential, and I think definitely MGS1 and MGS2 were super influential. And there's a lot that you wouldn't see with games now if it weren't for those games coming around at the time.
But to be the middle ground between you and Tom, I think it had some really strong aspects to it. I think that Hideo Kojima wanted to kind of grow from the formula in Metal Gear Solid where it was so inclined. I'm not saying the games that are inclined or like pushing you down the hallway are bad, but I'm saying potentially he wanted to explore other ways of approaching the stealth genre.
I get that. Other ways of doing the narrative and stuff.
I also think that potentially that game specifically had areas in it which were lacking, and they didn't. It had certain areas where I was hoping there would be more than actually was.
There's major creative differences in that game. You'd literally be... You can enjoy the game, Tom, so I'm not saying you can't enjoy the game or think it's a good game, but knowing what it's come from, you'd be mad not to see that there are creative differences during the development of that game, and they're clearly evident where there are some bits that are lacking or missing elements that previously would be in other titles. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but I'm not.
We've probably gone long on Metal Gear. I think those that know me know how much I love the series, and Jack, I couldn't agree any more with what you've been saying. I guess just to add to that, really, one of the main things with the Metal Gear games and the influence they've had is the boss battles.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think we can all remember sort of the first, the battle with Sniper Wolf stands out to me.
Is that your favourite battle?
I like the old man sniper in MGS3. I love that one.
That's a good one, yeah.
What was his name? Was it?
The End.
The End. That's fucking brilliant. That was a good one. And you had to keep changing all your views up to kill him. Do you remember that one, Tom?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Absolutely.
Thermal vision and night vision and that to find him. I just
love all of the boss battles.
There's some really great bosses in that game. You're right to bring that up. I'm glad you said that.
And no other games have been able to replicate that them boss battles in such a way that they're so diverse.
And they're not just this big
memorable
boss entity. There's like a background to the boss. There's a story. There's a motive behind the boss.
Yeah,
you get the nail on the head there.
4?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I tell you what, I really loved Metal Gear Solid 4. We play as Old Snake, and I really loved the bosses in it.
Yeah.
It's called Guns of the Patriots, where you got the octopus. And like they had like all these horrible stories that all come from war. But I loved the end boss fight in that, where you got at one point you're like Ray and Matt and Rex fighting one another, and then it's just you and Liquid at the top of one of these machines, just bare knuckle fighting one another.
And he kept like evolving, didn't he? Or he kept. Yeah. I think 4 was a great game. It gets a lot of bad rap because it was quite bloated, and that was Kojima doing a lot of cutscene stuff. And
they probably went a bit too cutscene heavy.
I think MGS4 was the most self-indulgent one on his part.
Yeah, I think so.
Why did it have that guy shitting himself as well?
That's the recurring guy from all of them, isn't it?
I love
it. Johnny something.
There's some weird things about it. I mean, like MGS5, you can unlock this like super secret outfit for Quiet where she's basically naked. And there's videos on YouTube of her like converting round in the rain with Snake just standing there staring at her. And I'm like, why is this in the game? It's really weird and it's really creepy. No, but he has some strange ideas. Like I respect the man a lot, but there are some strange ideas around that. But I mean, moving on to another title, I think again, Chris, you're dominating today.
Sorry.
Chris had picked out, I think it's kind of a bit of a block, but he had said sort of Tomb Raider and Uncharted, and both for very different reasons. And I suppose this is all around the adventure aspect, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
for what
it.
They
reason
very unique.
Reason I've written both up there is purely because I think Tomb Raider was obviously the big influence on Uncharted and several other games between that and Uncharted. Tomb Raider, you got to think, like when that come out, that blew everyone out the water. I mean, you was playing a third-person game in a 3D environment. You were exploring tombs. Do you know what I mean? You was out on a limb. You could even do handstands on the side of like devastating cliff edges. I mean,
yeah, it was a fantastic game, wasn't it? Really,
I mean, it's funny looking back. Like, you know, we didn't have a game that had such slick animations played out in third person like that at the time. It was buttery smooth, like at the time when it come out. Even though now you've got more polygons in a finger than the entire character model.
The original Tomb Raider came out in 1996, so
wow,
we're
yeah.
really going back now.
And
so.
I mean, that really opened up a lot of avenues in terms of adventure games, you know, third-person adventure games with a bit of action, a bit of puzzles. And the thing about Uncharted that I'd like to say is that it's so obvious from Uncharted 1 that it borrows a lot from Tomb Raider, but it just absolutely upped the ante on everything.
Of course
like,
it did.
Everything in terms of the cinematic value.
Naughty Dog just hit out of the park, didn't they?
Which is so ironic because then you look at the latest iteration of Tomb Raider, which come out after Uncharted, and you can obviously see that has been influenced by what Uncharted did.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's a really nice sort of back and forth there between them two kind of franchises.
I think Lara Croft as well has got to be one of the most recognised sort of faces in video games, isn't she?
And
like,
if
you didn't play games and you showed someone a picture, they go, "Oh, it's Tomb Raider." Like, they wouldn't know she's called Lara Croft.
Yeah.
But they go, "Oh, that's Tomb Raider."
They'd know that
It's
for sure.
a very influential sort of figure in video games, and I think a lot of people like to show that picture of her where she's changed over the years.
Yeah.
Because there's been so many Tomb Raider games, it charts the development, as you say, of, you know, smoothing out faces and polygons and creating better character models. So there's a picture of her, you know, almost like the Homo sapien walk where she's changing over time and quite blocky, well, very blocky, you know, with like sort of triangular boobs, and then going back to sort of, you know, where she is now, where it looks like a human.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think it's important to mention, where you say she's recognisable and that, I think it's important to mention that at the time that it come out, women were really underrepresented in games.
Yeah. They were, you're right.
And it was
absolutely.
It was almost odd, and it shouldn't have been at all, but this just goes to show you how underrepresented they were. It was odd to play as a woman, like, but it was great for that. I mean, you know,
and there's no reason that you shouldn't.
No,
but
exactly.
It just hadn't happened. Then, you're right.
The gaming world was dominated by males, really, and it was lovely to have that change of pace. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good that we're getting more really good, interesting female characters in
it is now.
I
think, you know,
we should.
Because
you know, it's a sort of explored area. I think that it's a very male-driven, chauvinistic environment, and the whole sort of, you know, Gamergate and issues with people calling out a single sort of person on Mass Effect's problems of facial animations. It just shows you that there's still a very sort of sexist undertone in the industry, and it's something that needs to be pushed into the 21st century, so to speak. So it's good to see things like that happening.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's a really great example. And I think we're probably going to have to wrap up here now, unfortunately. But there are some honourable mentions even on this board that we can get to discuss, such as Borderlands. Borderlands.
You just say that Borderlands has pretty much single-handedly made a genre when that come out.
Like, it has loot. Like a loot genre.
Like a first-person loot. No, yeah, but...
It was a loot-driven game, wasn't it?
Yeah, Diablo was like a top-down isometric. Yeah, I get that the loot inside of it borrows heavy from Diablo, but Borderlands, without Borderlands, would you have The Division? Would you have Destiny?
I suppose
don't
not.
know. I don't know if you would.
You know, and there's some other ones on here, again, we won't have time to speak about them, but PT, and how that sort of... affected the climate as opposed to sort of Resi 7 taking cues from that. World of Warcraft was a huge one that we really didn't get to scratch the surface on.
A lot of shit games.
Changed the face of MMOs.
Joe will agree that World of Warcraft was a
waste of time.
Boring waste of time. He's not even got a microphone to argue back. He's literally like sort of threatening to cut my mic off now. No, of course we wanted to talk about World of Warcraft. I mean, how could you not talk about one of the biggest MMORPGs of all time?
How could you not? But we are not going to.
We will at a later date. I'm saying it's so big. South Park made an episode of it, which was brilliant. Make Love Not Warcraft. If you've not seen that episode of South Park, it's probably one of the best episodes of South Park, in the top 10 for me, easily. Great. But anyway, guys, I'm sure that there's some titles that you think we might have missed, that we might not have included. So this is a great example to, head over to our Facebook, to our Twitter, to our Instagram. Let us know. We can discuss those comments. Head over to our website, digitalescapism.co.uk. Head over and find us on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe and review to us. Otherwise, we will find you down and kill you. I'm joking. Go on, what do you want to say? You're desperate to say something.
I was just going to say. I was going to
You're
say
like
goodbye.
An excited kid. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Making it awkward, Greg. Well, from Jack and the rest of the team at the Digital Escapism podcast, I just want to say goodbye. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe on iTunes and also leave us a comment. Hopefully 5 stars. If not, less than that. It's your body. Do what you want with it.
It's
also,
your body.
Follow us on Instagram and Twitter and everything else.
I've just said that. Though.
I know, but I don't know what else you want me to say.
Go fuck yourself.
I guess that makes us Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. And with that, thank you.
See you guys later. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.